Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Friend Show. I am your host, Nicholas Lorimer, and today I am joined by Mr. Gabriel Crouse. Gabriel, how are you?
Salute, Agricolai. Very good, Nicholas. How are you?
I'm all right. If I looked a little bit confused for a second there, it's because I had the stream open in another tab on my computer, so I could hear myself, which was very disconcerting. I'm also joined by Mr. Marius Roodt. Marius, how are you?
How's Nick? How's Gabriel?
Lekker.
So I've got my re-coffee, and I'm ready to hit another week
You are a barbarian.
Fantastic South African news. I saw that my little octopus got quite a lot of adoration last week, but I think we'll leave that for Thursday episodes because those are sometimes a little bit more off the wall than others. But let's start off with what might be, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm a strange, twisted human being, but I found this a rather delicious story, and I think it's only going to get more delicious as it really hits the news cycle. So the Democratic Alliance, the DA, has been really pushing hard on the Cader deployment stuff and the Cader deployment minutes that have come out of the Zondo Commission. And today, the DA put out a media statement saying that they're going to write to the chairperson of the State Capture Commission requesting that he urgently consider approaching the Constitutional Court seeking an order of perjury against President Cyril Ramaphosa over misleading testimony he delivered before the commission. Specifically, and Gabriel can perhaps read the minutes just now, he said that he said that he didn't recall any instance where they talked about deploying people to the judiciary in any sort of specificity, but the minutes from about a year after he was president of that committee say that they were, in fact, very specific about who they wanted to be judges of various things. So, Gabriel, can you start off perhaps by reading the bit that's in question?
Yeah, so the Cader Deployment Committee, let me just preface this by saying we are in an amazing country, right? We're run by an actual command council, which is called the Command Council. And then behind the scenes, you have the Cader Deployment Committee.
And there'll be more on the Command Council just now in the episode.
Okay, so this is the Cader Deployment Committee recommends Justices Kolopin and Chiki, in particular, for the Supreme Court of Appeals. Deputy President of the SCA, recall that the Justice Meyer is the Deputy President of the SCA, and her position is now vacant. So Judge Petse is recommended for that. In the Labour Court, the Acting Deputy Chief Judge President, who is Judge Molahleni, is recommended to be made permanent. The Eastern Cape Division Judge only has one candidate. I suppose that's their way of saying we don't have much room for making a recommendation because there's only one candidate. And the Deputy Judge President of the Northern Cape, Judge Patswane, is recommended. So those are a few of the recommendations. There's some others, but let me just finish this by saying that according to, I'm now going to quote the Cader Deployment Committee, speaking about the current process in which you have a judicial review committee, which is supposed to be transparent and non-partisan and largely headed by actual legal experts to decide who should become judges. The Deployment Committee said, the current process is incestuous. It contributes very little, if anything, towards judicial independence. The ANC prizes and values judicial independence. The current process provides for a system that has the judiciary having too much of uwe in determining the leadership of the... it ends without completing the sentence, and uwe, I think, is meant to read power. So the either the
seems like the ANC takes minutes like it runs SOEs.
Clearly.
It's not ideal. It's not ideal. And I think what's quite unfortunate is that now when you see those judges or justices' names, even if they're really good, there's an issue with their credibility, right? Because you wonder, have they been is there something going on there between them and this shady subcommittee of Cader deployment? And that's, of course, in the event that they're really good, which is the good scenario.
If they're not so good, you really start to question. But I must say, I think we might be being saved in this case by my father told me a story about a member of the National Party who once complained bitterly that the problem with appointing justices on political grounds so that they'll toe the line and do your political will is that within 3 months they think they got there on their own merit and not willing to listen to you anymore. And I think that's actually been part of the thing that's really kept the judiciary in South Africa alive for many, many decades.
We know Mogoeng, he surprised quite a lot of people when he actually went against, a lot of what the ANC was pushing. And I think a lot of people were surprised Mogoeng wasn't as pliable as people thought he would be. I mean, I think you can criticize Mogoeng for a lot of things, but I do think he turned out to be not as much under the ANC or President Zuma's thumb as a lot of people thought he would be.
Right. I seem to remember a Zapiro cartoon, I think at the time, showing him as like sort of a puppet of Zuma or something when he was appointed.
Yeah, it was, I can't remember, it was either Zuma was like controlling Mogoeng puppet, and either Mogoeng puppet was hitting Zuma with a stick like a Punch and Judy thing, or he was jumping off Zuma's hand. I don't know, it was one of those. I can't remember exactly, but it's something. Definitely Mogoeng was depicted as a puppet, but he was kind of rebelling, if puppets can do that.
Right. So I think what's really important about this perjury case here, politically speaking, is that, we've seen polling that suggests that the reason the ANC is able to, still be the biggest party in elections and still dominate the political landscape at election time is because Ramaphosa remains much, much more popular than the party, and that he is the cornerstone of ANC support. So, Marius, my question to you is this. Could this perjury accusation, and presumably there's going to be some kind of attempt to push him into court by the DA, do you think that could be really the beginning of the end of his shining reputation and his popularity?
No, I don't think so. He seems to be a bit of a Teflon president, President Ramaphosa, because, the ANC, or I don't know if it's President Ramaphosa, but they've been very good at saying all the problems we have in South Africa is because of this horrible, nasty man from Nkandla, nothing to do with the ANC or its policies. And we know a lot of the drive for the NDR is coming post-Zuma. I mean, the EWC push, NHR push. Sorry, it's all coming from since Cyril Ramaphosa came to power. Under Zuma, there were obviously these very bad policies, but there wasn't such a push for them as under Ramaphosa. And we also know President Ramaphosa was deputy president of the country while Jacob Zuma was in charge for his second term, and we can see he was involved in this deployment. We've also, he was in charge of fixing SOEs when he became deputy president, and we know SOEs are even in a worse state. So I think Ramaphosa has been doing very well. He hasn't been doing very well, but he's been doing very well to protect his reputation, and people do still think that he's like the kind of guy, the Mr. Fix-It we need to fix the country and so on. But we can see on just about every indicator South Africa's going backwards, and things are definitely. I think the decline is accelerating since Jacob Zuma actually left. But the ANC will make a huge mistake if they get rid of Cyril Ramaphosa. We've seen the polling and the statistics. He is far more popular than the ANC. And if the ANC gets rid of Ramaphosa when they have their conference later this year and they replace him with somebody, I don't know, David Mabuza or Lindiwe Sisulu, or maybe in Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, whoever it might be. But then they are guaranteed to get under 50% in the 2024 election.
Yeah. So, Marius, you described Zuma as the Teflon man, and you described Cyril as the Teflon man. But of course, that was what Zuma was described as until he wasn't. What do you agree, Gabriel, with what Marius just laid out?
Can I just say one thing though? I do think there has been ANC presidents in their first term have been pretty well protected. Thabo Mbeki, nobody could touch him in his first term. Ditto Jacob Zuma, and I think maybe they'll be the same with Cyril Ramaphosa. When the presidents on their second term becoming lame ducks, that's when the knives get sharpened and then things go a bit wrong for them. Mbeki and Zuma are the two precedents, and I think the same could be with Ramaphosa, but Gabriel might have a different opinion.
No, I think that's right. I think that pattern is a strong one and worth noting. I also think that people who think Ramaphosa is going to be removed from the ANC should just say the following words. United Russia, the party that Vladimir Putin leads, that party is going to get rid of Vladimir Putin. That just doesn't sound right. Why? Because Putin is twice as popular as the party, and Ramaphosa is twice as popular as the party. When you're twice as popular, the party doesn't get rid of you, even if you're not Vladimir Putin. So the little follow-up I want to give, reason I agree with Marius, that he might not be immediately damaged, but I do think that this might do some damage, is that I think Ramaphosa's been cherished and beloved by many people because they think he's a good liar. So this is an unusual thing in politics, but it's not actually that unusual, especially if you look at sort of late monarchic politics, like 19th century Europe, and strongman politics in a lot of Europe, as well as sort of decolonizing states in the 20th century. People like the sense of a politician being on their side. And if he's going to even lie on your behalf to defend your best interests, then you can get behind him. So what was Cyril Ramaphosa doing when he was deputy president? He was lying left and right. He was saying that Jacob Zuma is a good guy, that we should work with the ANC, that there's not so much corruption as people are saying there is. Everything's going to be okay. He was lying. Why was he lying? Because he had to tell those lies in order to get rid of Zuma and become president himself, so that then he could take charge and make everything good. We could have a new dawn. He had to lie to get there. If he was telling the truth from too soon, he would just be excommunicated and have no power. I think that's the mainstream narrative, actually. And it's just not allowed to be said very often. But I remember around Nazarik's time, radio people would call in and say this, random callers would say this kind of thing. Journalists can't say it because it's not nice to say good things about lying. The point is this. If people think that Ramaphosa is clearly still lying to subvert the Zondo Commission, which he and the nice guy, the New Dawnists, the Ramaphoriacs, have committed themselves to saying this is what's going to clean house. If they're still lying to subvert Zondo, then that story crumbles and falls to pieces. And I think that if you look at the organs that have been covering this very critically so far, they have been genuine Ramaphoriacs, actually. I'm thinking particularly of some of our colleagues at the Daily Maverick, an excellent investigative institution that has sometimes, in its analysis, strayed by way of love for Cyril Ramaphosa, and has, in this instance, been very, very critical.
You're very polite, Gabriel.
So that's a curiosity. I do think that the DA must be careful not to burn its fingers. There were serious concerns about Jacob Zuma being taken straight to the Constitutional Court. They say, look, Zuma was in contempt of the Zondo Commission, and then the Zondo Commission took him straight to the Concourt. That set the precedent that Ramaphosa should be taken straight to the Concourt for an allegation of perjury. This is a fact-based allegation. One of the big missing facts is what was going on when Ramaphosa himself was head of the Cader Deployment Committee. We don't know because Ramaphosa can't remember if they took minutes, which is hilarious. Hilariously beguiling, and this is why some people call him Slippery Cyril, because you can say that kind of thing with a straight face. But we should
definitely going to be the title to this episode.
So Slippery Cyril, as some people say, can't remember whether for like 6 years when he was the head of the committee, or 5 years or whatever it was, whether they kept any minutes of the meetings. So he just can't remember if they did the kind of thing that they clearly did in more recent days, where they were making direct recommendations about judges. But that kind of fact-finding, the Concord is not the right kind of place to be testing evidence of that nature and to be examining and cross-examining witnesses. I'm a classical liberal. I'm a process guy. The only reason that you could go straight to the Concord in Zuma's case was because you didn't need any facts. The court provided the facts, which is, the commission provided the facts, which is that subpoena's been asked to come and speak, and he's refused to do so. That's the only fact. You don't need to test that evidence because it's the testimony effectively of a court. Here you would need to test evidence. And that means you need to go to the High Court. So I think the DA is barking up the wrong tree personally, but I think they're very much in a broader sense barking at the right forest. The right forest is Cader deployment, Ramaphosa being in charge of that for a long time, and it's getting worse once he became president and leader of the party. If anything, he's more responsible, even if he's not in the committee, unless he goes and fires whoever was in that committee. And if you can imagine old Cyril, old Saint Squirrel, firing someone. He can't even fire Ladime Sisulu for violating an oath of office by saying that a black person who likes the Constitution is infected by a virus, a colonial virus of the brain. I mean, when your Minister of Foreign Affairs says that, or tourism, or whatever you call it, you can definitely fire her. But he's not
every reason to fire a minister. Marius, any final thoughts before we move on?
That was just one thing I wanted to point out when Gabriel said Putin is not going to lose. United Russia will not fire Putin because Putin is much more popular than United Russia, which I'm sure is true. I'm sure you know about Russian politics more than I do. But I would hazard a guess that Vladimir Putin controls United Russia with a much more irony fist than Cyril Ramaphosa controls the ANC at the moment. So I think there's a slight difference about how.
All the more reason for Ramaphosa not to get removed, right? Putin will fire people and maybe have them executed. Let's not get into that. But then if you're on the other side, you really want to get rid of him. Why would anyone want to get rid of Ramaphosa? He's not firing anyone. You're fine. Exactly. You're safe where you are.
And I just want to, you guys might be a bit too young to remember this, but when we talk about politicians lying, at the end of the 90s, there was a guy, Ndaweni Mahlangu, who was the second premier of Mpumalanga. And he became famous at the time for saying it is acceptable for politicians to lie. So I think not much has changed in South Africa.
John Mearsheimer, the realpolitik analyst at the University of Chicago, had a whole book about how noble lies that politicians tell.
Yeah, the problem with noble lies is they very quickly often turn out to not be very noble. But let's not get too sidetracked on that.
Yeah.
All right. So on Friday, Gabriel, myself, and two of our colleagues, including occasional guest on the Daily Friendship, Becky Mahlobo, went to the Union Buildings to hand over a petition of 16,000 signatures demanding an end to the Coronavirus Command Council, which is this extra constitutional body that has just sort of showed up and dictated our lives for 2 years, and an end of the state of disaster. So, Gabriel, I just want you to unpack that a bit more. We also went to Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's office at the Ministry of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, which was actually much easier to get into than the Union Buildings and hand over a petition. But, Gabriel, why don't you let everyone know what exactly happened on Friday when we went to the Union Buildings?
Yeah, so I mean, it was uncomfortable, and I've done a whole bunch of media, radio stations, and TV shows where I haven't really gotten into this because I think it's a bit of a sideshow. The main thing is to get the message out there. Once again, we need to end the command council. We need to end the state of disaster. We need to send the signal to the markets that they're going to be well respected. We need to send the signal to ordinary South Africans that dictatorship, rudimentary dictatorship, ruled by decree, a pseudo monarchy, whatever you want to call it, is not going to continue. We need to respect the science of virologists like Shabir Mahdi, professor at Wits, saying this is just crazy, and legal experts, including the opinions of people like former Chief Justice Mogoeng, saying this is you can't find anything in the Constitution or in the law to justify what's going on here. That is the most important thing. Okay, but so here's the sideshow, which is kind of interesting. So I've handed over petitions and memorandums and all kinds of things before at the Union Buildings. This time there was a small problem, which is that we were there on a Friday at 11 o'clock in the morning or whatever.
Close to the beginning of the year.
Yeah. So the police officer, Sergeant Sako, explained to us that, and I asked him for his first name, he wouldn't tell me. But that's getting to the end of the story. He explained that no one delegated with the authority to come and collect such petitions was in the office. And he explained that the reason for this is that we're still very close to the holidays. It's been a holiday recently. So I said, usually after the holidays, that's when I'm the most excited to work because I'm well rested. And he said, that's not how it is here.
Yeah, this conversation took about sort of half an hour of back and forth and a lot of arguing. So Gabriel was editing it severely.
But accurate. I mean, those words were said.
Yes, no, those words exactly were said.
So then I wanted to find out if no one was in the office because they'd gone out for lunch and they might come back, or whether they're not coming back at all. And he said, no, Amanda would have told him if someone's coming back. She knows everything. She can see everything in advance. She would have anticipated all of our needs. So she would have said, I said, come on, maybe can't we just call her again and see if the delegate in the presidency's office is maybe coming back later today. So he calls her, he says, you speak to her. He puts me on speakerphone. I say, hello, very polite. She's very polite. We agree that the delegate is coming in tomorrow morning. He's left for the day, but he's coming in on Saturday morning at 7 a.m. So I say, I'll come in at 8 a.m. to meet him. She says, that's fine. I say, is that a hard guarantee? Because if I have to come at 7 a.m. to meet him, that'll be fine. But I'm coming from Joburg, so 8 a.m. is going to be better for me. She says, 8 a.m. is fine. He'll be there from 7 till 11. Guaranteed, guaranteed, guaranteed. Okay. So we leave that. We go and do the cocktail ministry thing. The next morning I drive back, which is not my favorite thing to do on a Saturday morning, but I'm very happy to do it because this is 16,000 petitions being delivered to the president's office. We've had our lawyers have exchanged and communicated the basic information here, and they know about our petitions, but it's nice to make the physical handover. It's important as well because this is the voice of ordinary South Africans who want a real change. I get there and Sergeant Sako says, no, Vincent is not in, Amanda's not in, no one's come into the office this morning at all. So I say, that's strange because just yesterday they told me, I was told that someone's going to be there to receive this. And then Sergeant Sako said, no. Amanda was speaking without knowing. Which is the opposite of yesterday when Amanda knew everything. So I said, how do you know what she knows or doesn't know? Because I was trying to get to maybe we can call her, maybe if they're not in the office, you can call on a cell phone, find out when they're coming in, let's try and be helpful here. But I've only asked, how do you know what she does or doesn't know? He says to me, what kind of question is that? I said, it's a very basic question. He said, this is nonsense. And I remember you with your nonsense. You come here and you make nonsense. You are trying to undermine our authority. I said, no, officer, respectfully, I'm trying to do my civil duty, and it's part of your duty to keep the peace and make everything work here and explain what's going on. He says, I don't want to know. Don't tell me your nonsense. Comes around, pushes me to the side, grabs the box, takes us both out, throws the box with the 16,000 signatures out the front door, and then retreats back, sort of swearing at me in another language. So that was exciting to be forced out of the union building.
What you're saying, Gabriel, is that government is more accessible than ever. And this actually dovetails very nicely with one of our other colleagues who's currently working on a different project, and he's been trying to get in contact with a particular minister or a minister's office just to get some basic information, at least a sort of acknowledgement of receipt. Registered letters, emails, phone calls, no dice. So I think
this
pretty much at this point,
is on the back of a petition where we had over 20,000 signatures.
Yeah.
So this is not just a random person. This is heightened. We have a heightened authority, and we're still being disrespected. Sorry.
Gabriel, I see someone in the comments ask if there's video of this. Is there video of this? I don't think so, because you would have had to record it yourself.
There's CCTV footage of it, which we might, but I don't think we're going to get that disclosed for public consumption.
Oh, yes. Yeah, go to the union buildings. Please give us the CCTV footage of you throwing us out.
Can I say a sneaky thing on the side, on the sweet side? And of course, it's at Lamini Zuma's office. The delegates who came down to collect the petition, much more efficient, much better run. Surprisingly, we had a nice, polite conversation. We made the exchange. And then we got a little bit more friendly. Okay, we hope you have a good weekend. We hope you have a good weekend. We said, yeah, we're going to have a really good weekend because we're going to end the state of disaster and then we can all truly be free. And then they said, yeah. And then they realized that would, and then they were like, no. Then they walked away. And I could just see the film of all the conversations they've had and all the times they've been teased by their friends and their family for being part of this office. that is imposing the state of disaster and the command council, and having to just go along with their friends because they know it's kind of ridiculous what's been happening. And it was nice to have that just that moment of humanity through the layers of official good vibes and digital of officialdom that get in the way of good South African relations. But anyway,
Marius, any thoughts on our little adventure? Mostly Gabriel's adventure, to be fair.
Yeah, well, it's actually quite shocking that Gabriel was treated like that. I know sometimes when I've been arguing with Gabriel, I wish I could also throw him out of wherever we may be, but that's not the way that some lots of people, you don't treat other people like that. But I mean, I was just thinking about it. I think it would be, I think a West Wing, but set in the TV series, The West Wing, but set in the Union buildings. I think there would be yes, there'd be quite a show. I think I hope South African filmmaker decides to take that on because
the cast would be very small because no one's ever in the office.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It would not be shot on location.
Yeah,
no, it'd be shot at the front desk with the sergeant there, just turning people away.
They perhaps I need people who actually work at the Union buildings. Who knows?
Well, as you pointed out in a meeting this morning, Gabriel, this does show that the Union buildings has better security than other national key points, as we've discovered. All right, let us finish off today with a story of I just put in my notes here, tennis man. And this is, of course, Novak Djokovic, I think is his name, Serbian tennis superstar, as he's described in the media. He has been having a little bit of a tussle with the Australian government for a while because he originally was granted an exemption to come to Australia despite, I think, having COVID-19. And please correct me if I'm wrong on this one, gentlemen. And this, of course, made people very upset because Australia has decided that more lockdown, the better. And so a lot of ordinary Australians were very annoyed that a tennis superstar got exemptions. And so they all complained. And the Australian government suddenly said, no, well, actually, we're using our discretionary power of visa granting to say you can't have a visa, get out. And there was a big court battle over this.
Can I just make a change there? So there were two court challenges. The first court challenge was his lawyers said that the Australian government had broken their own promise. They said you can give us information by this time, and if that explains the situation, he's got convalescent protection. It's better than vaccine protection, more costly to get, but it should work just as well once you've got it. Explain yourself. And then they arrested him before that time had lapsed. And that was one of the reasons that the first Australian court judgment was that the Australian government had treated Novak Djokovic unfairly. And for that reason, he was then released. His visa was granted. The second step was then for the Minister of Immigration to step in and use his executive authority to say, I deny you a visa, and so you've got to get kicked out. And my understanding is he made it explicit. This was not on medical grounds. There can be no scientific justification for denying Novak Djokovic a visa on the basis of the fact that he has as good as vaccine protection. Instead, the grounds were that he's sending a bad message to the rest of the world and to Australians, and so they need to get rid of him to keep the peace, which, of course, also sends a bad message if you're going to do that. That all being said, Djokovic was a bit naughty. He or whoever filled in his form might have lied about whether he was when he left Spain, and it seems like he hung out with some children after he'd gotten his positive test, but maybe not. Maybe the positive test only came out later and he had a rapid test at the time, which came out negative. This is what he says, but it's hard to believe him because, of course, of the quite obvious lie on the visa application form where he said he hadn't traveled in the last 2 weeks, but he had. So bit of a mess there. Does seem to me that Australians have lost out and the sport has lost out on something because Djokovic is possibly the greatest of all time. And Australian Open, he's the reigning champion. That is his best tournament.
I see Gabriel's clearly in the pay of Big Djokovic over here.
I'm a Federer fan.
So, Marius, your thoughts before we close out the episode?
I don't have too much to add there, but I mean, if Novak Djokovic did lie on his visa application, then I think the Australian government is within their rights to refuse him a visa. But if the main reason they decided to cancel his visa is because they don't like the message it'll send, then it's a bit, I'm not too sure about that. And it's a tricky one because obviously Novak Djokovic is because he's one of the best sportsmen in the world. It doesn't mean he doesn't follow the same rules as everybody else. But I think a lot of people probably think the rules to get into Australia are probably a bit silly in the first place. So I think it's quite a complex issue. And I don't think while you can maybe agree that Novak Djokovic shouldn't have got kicked out of Australia, I think we can also agree he probably hasn't covered himself in glory either, and it's probably also could have acted a little bit better in this whole saga.
Indeed. All right. I think that is all the time we have.
Come on, are you going to avoid saying Novak Djokovic?
So I'm going to admit to our listeners that I really don't care about tennis or tennis stars.
No,
so
it's a very big boomer meme at the moment. It's call him Novak.
Novak.
So
Novak Djokovic.
This is literally
also Jocko,
the first time.
Just so that you know, Jocko means to win. Like when they're playing in Italy, they're like, when you say you've won the game, they say Joko Djokovic. So Novak Djokovic means the no vaccine winner in Serbian. Which is very bad.
I didn't know that he was being called Novaks. Whatever you just said, whatever clever thing you just said.
It's very silly. It's all silly.
But anyway, everyone else seems to care about this, so that's why we're talking about it. But anyway, that is all the time we have for today. So thank you very much for watching. Please support the Institute of Race Relations by SMSing your name to 32823. It's on the banner behind me. We'll call you back and sign you up as a funder. And then when people ask who funds the IRL, you can say me, which is, good bragging rights. Anyway, thank you very much. And we will see you tomorrow on the Daily Friend Show. Cheers, everyone.